Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our Max Colonization series. In fact, I think we may only have a few left. Before you get all sad and weepy though, do not worry, we have plenty to do on this planetoid. Starting with the fact that, well, I want to open the temporal tear, which as many of you may know requires shooting a bunch of rad bolts into the temporal tear opener. It shoots a laser beam, the temporal tear will then open, and then all hell will break loose here on Frostado, with a bunch of meteor showers coming down all at once, even though when you take a look at the planetoid itself, it says there are no meteor showers forecasted. It's just something that happens when you open the temporal tear. We also have to think about the sustainability of the dupes who are going to be living on this planetoid, to include oxygen and food. I think the food we've got sort of handled for quite some time. We have 951 kilos worth of sleet wheat grains, which if my math is even somewhat close is enough to feed 2 duplicants for about 200 cycles. Not to mention the fact there are a lot of naturally growing sleet wheats here anyways. Yeah, not enough to sustain them, but definitely enough to make that number even longer. Although, for those of you who've been watching my channel for quite some time, you know I like infinite sustainability in ONI. So we'll have to figure out another food source for them as well. Based on how cold it is over here, I'm not quite sure what that'll be. Granted, the sleet wheats themselves can go to minus 55. The bad thing about the sleet wheats though is they require dirt and water. Water I'm not too worried about. We have thousands of kilos of ice here on this planetoid that we will be able to melt. We also do have dirt down here. It's not a lot. Granted, I say that. But if we're talking about 200 cycles worth of food for dupes, and each one of these tiles has about 1,800 kilos worth of dirt, that could sustain some sleet wheat for quite some time. I have to be careful with this bottom area though, especially if I plan on keeping this area cold, for the simple reason that they are thermally distinct. I don't want this water freezing, and I don't want this ice melting. At least yet. We're going to figure out a plan for all that. But I think starting off with, we have to be concerned with the power situation. All the rad bolt generators that we're going to be running will require 480 watts each. And I'd like to run at least 3 rad bolt generators, if not 4. But our bare bones solar power is not going to cut it. So I think what the plan is going to be is taming each one of these iron volcanoes for a couple of reasons. First, well, that's a lot of juicy iron. But secondly, these volcanoes are power positive. And what I mean by that is, yes, I'll have to put a steam turbine on them that will generate power, but then I have to keep the steam turbines cold. With supercoolant, it's only going to take one thermal aqua tuner to keep all 4 of these cold. In fact, I'm going to use that one thermal aqua tuner to keep this entire colony cold. So I think that's where we start, which means I need to start doing a lot of digging. All right, away team, it's time to get to work. Now, when I'm digging these out, I'm going to be using the 7-tile method. For those you don't know, the 7-tile method is separating your ladder tiles by 7 tiles. I think that's 7, yes. And the reason why we do this is because when standing on top of a ladder, a duplicant can dig down 3 tiles. While standing on top of the bottom rung, the duplicant can dig out 4 tiles. So you have 100% coverage of all the digging that you need, but you don't have to build as many ladders in the meantime. Don't worry about these little guys. They were just here because we were doing some exploring. For the areas that we know we're going to use, we tend to use... We tend to use 4 tile high. Why is this one 5? I must have counted from here. Hold on, dupes. I apologize. There may have been some mistakes. Okay, that's better. I see what the issue was. It's because I built this down 1 lower as well because I wanted to keep all that sweet carbon dioxide in here. Granted, when I do oxygenate this place, it is going to compress that carbon dioxide, but hopefully by then I'll have some food storage, so it doesn't really matter. Additionally, when I'm digging all this out, I'm going to be saving all of the ice. The reason why is because I'm going to use that ice to create oxygen. Yes, it's going to be another one of those silly systems where I'm using the volcano to melt the ice. Hopefully, it turns out a little bit better than this system here. It works, but it's touch and go, especially when this cool steam vent is dormant. At least it turns back on in 14 cycles. Until then, let's get some more ice temperature shift plates, shall we? We have about a half a tank of oxygen left on the colonizer, which should be enough to get all this digging done, especially considering so much of it all the dupes can do. After all, only Josh Manchester can take care of the hard digging. At least I think. Did I ever give any other dupes the hard digging skill? Not that I have a lot of available morale. Yeah, it does not look like it. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. But I tell you what, I know we're all a sucker for a nice old-fashioned montage, so while I'm getting this work done, why don't you enjoy the music? Let's go! And that just about does it. You may have noticed in the middle of the montage that I did add the plastic ladder, not necessarily just for the digging, but also because now I'm going to sweep every single thing here up. Gigantic waste of time or just being a little OCD? Probably a little both, but it's okay. We did make sure not to uncork any of the volcanoes, the most dangerous one being this one here. The only thing keeping it corked is 10 kilos worth of snow. So if I dig out this block of ice, the snow would fall and then the volcano would start erupting. Now I am going to do this sweep, but I'm going to do it at a lower priority. So when the dupes aren't doing anything else because I am busy building or designing, they'll have something to do. I also need to start looking where I'm going to put the mini pod because I need to start looking for dupes. To start off with, I think I'm going to be doing the frost-proof dupes, because it is still nice and chilly here, even though we've dug everything out. Plus, we're going to be growing more sleet wheat, which means we're going to want to keep the place nice and chilly. But I'm also going to need a cook in order to be able to cook up all that sleet wheat. So a frost-proof cook, I think, is the first on the ballot. And that looks like plenty to do. As we design the rest of this planet, all the swept materials are coming up here to these two automatic dispensers. I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping that metal tile nice and cool because I don't want all of that ice to melt until, well, I'm ready for it to melt. All said and done, we ended up with almost 800 tons of ice in all of its wonderful forms. So if I were to make a tank, it would quite literally take up about an area this big. Needless to say, it's plenty of water, or will be. I suppose the next step as the dupes do all that sweeping is designing the system in here. And the start of that process is, well, getting some tamers going. This iron volcano here is dormant, so I feel the safest working with it. Now, these are going to be my very simple sort of tamers, with one exception. And that is that they're all going to be feeding their power to a giant battery box. The battery box makes sense for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not concerned about the heat coming off the batteries because I'm going to be cooling this place back down. But two, because we also have solar here. But because I'm going to be conserving all the power inside of the steam chambers, I don't think we're going to be doing jumbos. I think we're going to be doing smart batteries. More on that here in a little bit. Starting off this design, I'm going to leave enough room for a thermal aqua tuner, an auto sweeper, and a conveyor loader. I am going to need the smallest of liquid locks. Not quite sure how that's going to look yet. All of this insulated tile is being made out of granite. For our digging efforts, we did end up with 460 tons of it. I think for the temporary liquid lock, I'm going to keep using this little bit of petroleum that was sent over. I didn't plan on sending it over. It was just left over inside the interplanetary launcher. For instance, just like this 55 kilos of phosphorite. I've started sending phosphorite over here because we're going to need to feed the wheeze warts. The point being is, there's still a little bit left in the launcher because the minimum launch mass is 200 kilos. But lucky for us, this will be perfect for liquid locks, and I'll even be able to transport it around and use it in multiple places. Kiku, let's pretend like this isn't our first time on a random planetoid. I will empty the petroleum right here, and I'm going to put a tile right there. Yes, this is making a giant mess. Oh, that's more of a mess than I expected. Oh, it just froze the petroleum. What? One does not freeze the petroleum? Okay, that's going to be more of a nuisance than I expected. Apparently petroleum freezes at minus 57, so that's not going to work. Well, when all else fails, since we're going to need it anyways, start sending over our wonderful supercoolant. Just try to hurry up and send it because we don't have a lot of time here. Who knows when this thing's going to come out of dormancy. I need the liquid lock in order to be able to vacuum this place out. But I suppose we'll start putting in our thermo aqua tuners, little liquid pipe thermo sensor, tie up the automation, and I'll put the return pipe in and the exit pipe, but I'm not exactly sure how this is going to look. For the simple reason, it's going to be cooling every steam turbine and keep this base up here cool. So I suppose I need to start putting in more of the scaffolding so I know where all the steam turbines are going to be. Now I know it's going to bother everybody to no end that they're not all matchy-matchy. Unfortunately, these volcanoes are butted right up against this ladder rung. And I would move the ladder over, but then it butts up against this point of interest area. Now, normally I don't like putting the Tamer wall right next to the volcano. This is some hot material that comes out of here at 2526. Luckily, there's will be a giant steam bath in here to absorb a lot of that heat, and we'll be rotating it through, but still, you get my point. But now I will know where all of the steam turbines are so I can continue this run. I will not be using insulated liquid pipe. I will be keeping this entire colony cold with it. For the steam turbines themselves, I will be using the conduction panel. Yes, there will be an environment here, so I wouldn't actually need to use the conduction panel, but I really like how they work. We're going to loop up to this third tamer right here. Let's see, where did I go? I think that works well because when we finish it, the steam turbine will sit right there and the conduction panel will be in the middle. And then from here, I think I'm just going to do a nice big loop, although I'm not 100% sure quite yet, but our battery boxes are going to be going up here somewhere, but I can move them at that time. In other news, Kronos just expelled some gunk over here. Lie, buddy. All right, you have the 80 kilos. There's a gear bomb right here. Oh, I think I know what's going on. This gunk extractor is full whenever they're not making more gear bomb. So there needs to be some ebb and flow. Well, does anybody know how we get ebb and flow with some liquids? Ha ha, that's right. Your friend and mine, the return of the buffer tank. The question is, I'm going to get the buffer tank in here. This is not going to be pleasant. And there we go. Now, when they use the gunk extractor, the gunk goes into the buffer tank first and then takes several bridges to go back to the bottle emptier. Fear not, we still have a washroom because the buffer tank does not break those rules. And now we'll have 5 tons of buffer. Not that we'll need it. It's just sometimes when the bottle emptier is full with the 80 kilos of gunk that they need to make the next gear bomb, well, the next boop couldn't use the gunk extractor. I could also just increased the amount of gunk that the bottle emptier is able to store just by using the slide bar going up to 200 kilos. In this case though, I liked the precision of only getting 80 kilo bottles. Back over on Frostado, we have the steam turbines going in. They're made out of iron. I am sending another 20 tons of iron over though because I still want a lot more smart batteries. You may wonder why am I putting so many smart batteries in? And it has to do with the ebb and flow of when those volcanoes are dormant versus active. So I would rather get all of these batteries charged and keep as much of the power as we can. What is going on over here? This is the second duplicant who's ended up getting incapacitated inside of our sauna. The rescue team's taking care of them, but I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, they're idling under the rad bolt reflector, so they're getting hit with rad bolts. Well, ain't that just about stupid? Somebody save Pud. Since I'm sending so many materials over to that new planetoid. The duplicants have been dropping things off and then just standing here. Another one of the benefits of being at cycle 2604. There we go. Now rest up and don't go back outside. So to put the long story short, the reason why I'm using all the batteries is because there could be a time when all of these volcanoes are dormant, or their dormancies overlap to where we're not generating as much power as we used to. Now, when the duplicants are living here and doing their thing, it won't be such a big deal because their power requirement will be very minimal. But while we have the rad bolt generators going, I figured more power stored is better. And now that I know exactly how this power setup is going to look, I can adjust the cooling loop just like this. There's been a lot of conversation in the past about whether or not it's better to have the pipes go across the building or through the tiles underneath. Both have merits, but I think one opinion is based on some older knowledge. It used to be that a lot of the buildings transferred thermals with the tile right under their point of interest tile. In this case, on the batteries, it would be this tile right here. In recent years, though, a lot of the buildings and the components inside of them have been sort of thermally insulated from the outside environment. Now, I doubt that's the case with batteries, but since I'm going to have an atmosphere here filled with wonderful oxygen, this system here is going to work out well. And there's another one. Glenn, why are you standing there, buddy? Well, just in case, I think we're going to throw in a few more triage cots because, well, this is getting ridiculous. I mean, we're not even sending anything anymore, and yet the dupes still want to idle right here in this tile. At least, though, with us not sending anything, there's no rad bolts coming back down. Just another day in the life of Echo Ridge Gaming. Now, on this planetoid, I was able to find some wolframite and some iron ore, so I could use heavy watt wire. Heavy watt wire has a decor negative of -25 at a radius of 6 tiles. Heavy watt conductive wire is only -20 at a radius of 4 tiles. So when you have the choice of either, go with the heavy watt conductive wire. In this case, I'm going to be plugging all of these into the batteries, into a main spine that's going to connect with the battery box. Just like this, going right up the gut. Somehow I still have enough iron left, and there goes the iron. Don't worry, we'll send more. I suppose I'm also going to need the spine to go up here, because that's where I'm going to put a few transformers made out of iron again. One's going to be for our rad bolt generation. One's going to be for the top side with the away team necessities like the payload opener and the exosuit forge. And I suppose whatever else is necessary for the colony. And then the last one is going to be used for the thermal aqua tuner, which I have on its own circuit and will ride right up through here. The rest will connect in from the second from here. And then I'll just throw this line up through this tile in anticipation of hooking up the rad bolt generators. This is coming together really nicely. If it weren't for some inconsiderate dupes, this episode would be going really well. Yeah, talking to you too, boops. Okay, I'm really starting to get confused. This is ridiculous. And another one bites the dust. Why are they hanging out there? Oh, this is what it is. They're trying to collect the nuclear waste, so they're just standing there, where they eventually get beamed in the head. Let me make sure this is on sweep only. Don't worry, the hospital is pretty much cleared out at this point. The last thing I'd like to do is upgrade the power for the solar panels and get it on the right network. Right now it's coming off of this transformer and that is not correct. So we are going to recapture all of this juicy material. I'm also going to get rid of these guys. We will have some backup emergency manual generator power, but I don't think that's going to be necessary for quite some time. Now I do need to power this here, but I have to get that conductive wire all the way up through here. I know what we can do. We will separate it here, and then I will build a ladder run. Don't love this, but at least it gets the conductive wire away from the main part of the base, and that way the duplicants don't constantly get bombarded with the negative decor. Once again, we'll be doing iron. Well, that's a little bit ugly, but we'll deal with it. Thanks, Neutronium. And then we'll add another bridge right here. Beautiful. And then all we have to do is extend this up and send it across all of the solar panels. A little bit of wire construction over here. Speaking of which, do I have my supercoolant yet? Oh no. Where's my supercoolant? Senna has a current errand to drop it off. There's 190 kilos in here. I suppose it is being shipped. It's just a little bit slower than I expected. Oh, I know where my super coolant is. I'm an idiot. We have 6 tons here. Let me go ahead and empty that storage so I can get the bottles, and we can definitely stop shipping over super coolant. 6 tons should be enough, right? There's my super coolant. Unfortunately, it looks like I've ran out of iron again. We'll send over another 20 tons. And right now, the entire network does not have power, so I'm going to prioritize getting this heavy watt wire done, so that way the power spine at least is operating. Everything else is coming along decently nice, other than, you know, the lack of iron. Now that I have some super coolant, I can go ahead and put a little bit in here. Unfortunately, right now, the only bottle is 6.2 tons. I don't need that much. So what I'm going to do is just say, hey, empty some super coolant in this bottle emptier just for a second. Yep, that's perfect. Yes, beautiful. And now I'll have a couple of smaller bottles. I'll take one of these, 407 grams, perfect. Place it gently on this little shelf and then start siphoning out this sauna. Give me a few minutes to let the dupes collect all the payloads. Oh, I did prioritize this, but right now they have no iron in order to do it. But as soon as they get more iron, oh, wait a minute. Because they can't open the payloads, because the payload opener doesn't have any power, they can't get to the iron to put the heavy watt conductive wire on, which means the solar panels aren't actually charging the batteries. So, desperate times, desperate measures, just for a second, just to get some stuff working. I am manually unpacking a couple of the payloads just to finish off the conductive wire. I don't have to worry about setting a different priority from this stuff up here, because this is closer. And because it's closer, it means the dupes are naturally going to do it first anyways. We've got some of the batteries charging, but more importantly, the power grid has power, which means the payload opener and the exosuit forge are powered. And now all the payloads are being dropped off at 10 units at a time. Already, we have multiple tons of iron coming out, so the rest of the power infrastructure will be put in pretty quickly. I'm hoping it all gets finished before they run out of oxygen, because it's almost time for me to make a return trip home. There is oxygen in this atmosphere that I could pump into the rocket like we've done in the past, but there's not a lot of it in here, and right now it's the only thing keeping everything from overheating, and I don't want to play the overheating game. All the solar panels are now hooked up to the grid. The dupes are just topping off the batteries because the manual generators call them when they're below 50%. So as long as the solar panels are enough to provide power, we should be okay. A sort of odd interaction with the manual generator is as we hook up batteries, well, they start off uncharged. The manual generator puts the errand out if just one battery is under 50%, not the total charge on the network. So I think for now, just to save on some labor, we're going to go ahead and cancel those and let the solar power take care of the grid. It's not a lot, but it should be enough. All right, this is cutting it a little too close. We're down to 300 kilos. Let's go ahead and summon the crew. Make sure Josh is a part of the team. Select our destination to go home. Only 7 hexes away. And then we get to see if this system here worked for absorbing all of those thermals, or am I about to break some stuff? And for some reason we weren't launching, and it's because I had taken out the rocket control station. There we go. Godspeed away, team. Yes, yes. Oh, absolutely perfect. Well, almost perfect. We melted some gas pipes because they were made out of granite. I might insulate those next time. Solar panel only went up to 40 degrees. Not shabby. All right, we'll be back in just a quick minute. Let the record show it is halfway through cycle 2612, and the time on my clock says 3:40 p.m. I think I'll go get a snack. Okay, we're back. It is now 4:20 p.m. and cycle 2622. It took a little bit longer than I expected because dupes kept coming in trying to disinfect the gas output fitting and the gas vent. So they would come in, get their suits filled, thereby taking some oxygen from the colonizer. Wasn't too big of a deal. I had a piece of medium cheddar cheese for a snack. I normally go with the sharp cheddar, but the store was out this time. Let me know in the comments below if you're eating a snack right now. Notice that all the batteries are fully charged, which isn't really too surprising with the dupes coming back, because, well, the payload opener wasn't being used, nor was the exosuit forge. Not even the gas pump was turned on because we still have some of this wiring to finish. Not to fear, not to fear. I'm going to queue up a few dozen more commands and we'll let the dupes do their thing. The first one being automation. All these steam turbines need to be connected to the grid, and that way we know when we want to turn them on. Now, this won't be the only way to turn them on, because obviously if this area gets too hot, we also have to be able to turn them on. This is where it's going to get a little, well, because we'll only have to turn them on for one specific tamer. For instance, if this one gets too hot, this steam turbine needs to turn on, not all four of them. The big question is, how do we do that? And that is with our friend the filter gate. The filter gate is one directional. You can see the little arrows next to the inputs and outputs. But remember, the battery is going to be sending a signal down this line to say here on this steam turbine. So if I have a thermosensor here that's sending a signal in this direction, it won't be able to pass through this filter gate. Now, since we are using this filter gate for just a directional, I'm going to lower this down to 0.1 seconds. That way the signals come through from, in this case, right to left and don't sit there static for 5 seconds. It'll be near instantaneous when this battery decides to send the signal, which is going to be at the standard 9060. I just realized that I had planned for another row of batteries here and did not install them. Hashtag pro. Also didn't connect this conductive wire, and it also means, just for the point of uniformity, I'm going to bring the automation down to this battery here and set it at 9060. Our first tamer is vacuumed out. In fact, I have the other ones being vacuumed out now with the help of our amazing supercoolant liquid locks. We have one more that goes in here, but it also means I can get rid of this gas pump and start to put in the rail system. Now this volcano says it is idle, which I suppose we're going to have to test that theory eventually, because I need to get the supercoolant in here and running. So I'm going to start off by putting in a bottle drainer right here. We'll make it out of iron and fill this entire loop with supercoolant. Well, once I fix some of the boo-boos. In fact, it's rising pressure now, so I know once it finishes, I'll have probably 10 cycles to be able to uncork it, put everything I want to in place, analyze it, and then seal everything up. I don't like the way this is going to look, so I'm going to deconstruct that there. That way I can put the conveyor loader here and the auto sweeper on top of it. I think that looks a lot cleaner. And then I'm going to use the Wolframite rails to run this through. Yeah, I think that looks decent. And I'm going to use the same conveyor chute system that I've always used with a conveyor chute and then a timer sensor that tells the conveyor chute when to open. Yes, I know I'm going to need an automation bridge there. No harm, no foul. And then once we have this analyzed, I'll do the math to make this as efficient as possible with holding iron in, which means we're going to be holding heat in more as well. Last thing to do is get some power hooked up in here, and we'll make that look a little bit better. And because I want to hold as much heat in here as possible, I will end up putting some drywall. We'll make it out of igneous rock. The question is, what's the design that I use? So many options, and I don't have that sort of artistic eye. When all else fails, we'll use checkers. Starting with some charcoal checkers. You'll notice that I'm not putting them over these two center tiles because those are the hot spots for the volcano, and the igneous rock drywall could end up melting at 1409. Next up, we'll use some H2O checkers, followed with either algae checkers or bright checkers. I need to figure out which one's orange. That way we definitely do not use that. Yes, it's a thing. I think the algae is green if I remember from my chat. For those of you wondering why, well, it's because I'm a proud alumni of the University of South Carolina, and we despise, well, everything orange. There we go. That looks pretty good if I say so myself. And it looks like everything is vacuumed out, so I can get rid of all these gas pumps. Need to get rid of all the gas pipes, and then start putting in the identical setup that we have everywhere else. Starting with the rails. Nice and easy. Looks like you're still waiting for your beautiful metal tile. Looks like I'm going to need an automation bridge here as well. And I think that's everything. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Oh, yes. The same thing I'm always forgetting. And that is, of course, the liquid vent for the exhaust from the steam turbine. There's one down. Let me get the other three finished up, and then I'll show you how we're going to turn them on. one thing that we're going to be playing a little dangerously is this iron volcano is dormant, and well, I have to run the rails, and I can't do it without uncorking that volcano, so fingers crossed. We're going to start with this one first for the reason that it has the thermal aqua tuner, which means it's time to get in here and uncork this. The only thing I'm going to be doing a little bit different is instead of dumping water in here, I'm going to allow the volcano to make the water all by itself by taking some of the wonderful ice and making a temperature shift plate here. Now, when the temperature shift plate melts, it'll create 800 kilos worth of water, which will be about 115 kilos per tile that'll fill with water and then eventually steam. With the 4-high tile tamer, it'll end up being almost 30 kilos per tile, which is decent, but not where I love it. So I'm actually going to add a second temperature shift plate made out of ice as soon as I find the ice again, right there. These are the two hot spots for the volcano. It'll 100% melt this one immediately. This one may take a little longer until we actually get some steam going, but we will see when we get there. Let me also get that analyzed really quick. Fallout Stan, I'm going to need you to hurry on this one. Good news and bad news. The good news being, well, the temperature shift plate trick is working like a dream. The bad news is we've got an eruption, and hopefully one eruption is not enough to make all this into steam. Although it is getting close, the water's up to 60 degrees. Oh, good. On the initial temperature shift plates melting, some of them quickly turned into ice because all these components were so cold. Well, luckily, it didn't matter because these 7 tiles could easily hold 1,600 total kilos. And there's our first one done. Let's go ahead and sweep that. Also notice this iron is still sitting at 360 degrees. I'm happy about leaving it there now. We're not going to turn this system on quite yet. I did disconnect it from the power because I didn't want the thermal aqua tuner turning on until we were done in here. Our next step is figuring out, in order to make it as efficient as possible, how often we have to open this vent. Right now I have all 4 of the tamers set at 1 out of 60, which means it'll open once for 1 second every 60 seconds, which is a good roundabout number for most volcanoes if you don't want to do the math. If you do want to do the math, well, here you go. It used to be a lot more difficult until the wonderful devs gave us the average output information in the pane. Well, we know every single tile of debris is 20 kilos. Well, the average output means no matter if it's erupting or not, if you take everything into account, what's the average output of this volcano in terms of iron? So since we have that, we can take our 20,000 grams, which is just the 20 kilo packets of debris, and divide it by the 257.9. And that comes out to be 77.5, which means if I open this vent up once every 77.5 seconds, it'll be a perfectly even amount of iron coming out of the chute. So just as soon as we've used the last little bit of debris, the iron volcano will start erupting again to put more iron on the rails. Now the volcano is a little bit ahead of the curve because, well, it's already erupted once and given us 361 kilos worth of refined iron. So I think what we're going to do is just go ahead and seal this up. Now I'm going to hope that it kicks the supercoolant out to the right, but knowing my luck, it's going to push it into the left. Either way, I'll take the supercoolant of shame for how easy this was to tame. The H2O checker tamer is getting ready to erupt, and there's another opportune time to save. Stand by, which means as soon as I see that it is done, I'm going to get in here, cork it, get it analyzed, and then close it up. I can go ahead and start with at least one temperature shift plate right here. It's this tile that really matters. Well, there's our answer. Some of the supercoolant went left, some of the supercoolant went up. None of it went exactly where we want, but that's okay. It does mean, though, it is time to turn that thermal aqua tuner on. I do have the liquid pipe thermo sensor set at minus 25 degrees. No rhyme or reason. I just found a temperature that was inside the range of sleet wheat, which is minus 55 to 5. And then as soon as the thermo aqua tuner turns all of this water into steam, which it's not going to take long, I will be able to turn this on and get some iron coming out Oh, I sort of missed the boat on this one. Let me go ahead and get this analyzed as soon as possible. Algae checkers is dormant, so I'm just going to do this the slow and easy way. And we're almost done with magma checkers. Come on, Stan, we have plenty of volcanoes to analyze. What is your science rating these days? I know you haven't done a lot of research, but yeah, science at 24. Gonna need you to pick up the pace, buddy. There we go. And this time I'm gonna try to build the tile here first and see if the supercoolant will push back the dupe's way. I thought they'd fixed that a long time ago, but I'm supposing that is just for debris. That when a duplicate builds something, the debris always falls towards them. It may not apply to the liquids. Hope we did everything correct in here because it's about to be sealed off. Survey says, nope, supercoolant of shame. We're about to have an eruption here at charcoal checkers, so I'm gonna do a quick pickup of that iron. Not enough to overheat the conveyor loader or the auto sweeper considering they're not in steam yet, but enough to make sure that there's no iron for the temperatures to be able to average with. If that 300 and something kilos were sitting here at 100 degrees, well, as it started erupting, it would average with this 300 kilo iron, which is not what we want. Oh, I just realized I made a boo-boo. None of my cooling loops are going through the tiles to cool down the iron the rest of the way. All right, hold on. This isn't too big of a deal. We'll just do some interconnections real quick. There we go. And now we have that metal tile sitting in here being cooled down. And since the timer sensor only allows the chute to open once every 77.5, that debris has plenty of time to get down to temps. It also means all the iron still in the tamer will have all of its heat taken out of it, at least for the most part, while the steam turbine is running. And look at this, we have a beautiful steam bath. Now right now the steam is sitting at about 130 degrees. We will generate more heat. As such, I have the thermosensors set at 225 degrees and above, and that way the steam turbine, no matter what, regardless if the batteries don't want power, the tamer will still turn on. As it is right now, steam turbine's turning on because it's receiving a green signal from the batteries because the batteries are low, and the batteries are low because this thermal aqua tuner is cooling down, well, a little bit of coolant down to minus 25. Let me go ahead and fix all these. Oh, we have another eruption here. This one's with H2O checkers. Let me go ahead and grab these data banks and then get this one sealed up. Double checks of automation, plumbing, power. Okay. No, we're not hanging out in there, noosh. Noosh! Now that we're finishing up some more of the analyzing of the volcanoes, I can set the rest of the conveyor chutes. This one's at 313 grams per second of an average output, which means it needs to open once every 63.8 seconds. Over here at magma checkers, 346.1, which means this chute needs to open once every 57.7 seconds, which, by the way, it will be active in the next 6.5 cycles. And then finally, algae checkers has an average output a little lower than the rest at 241 grams per second, which means it only needs to open up once every 82.9 seconds. And now that the thermal aqua tuner has done a decent job getting this coolant down to temp, it has stopped running, and the battery box is much better off for it. This one's next, about to erupt in one cycle, so hopefully we'll get some hot steam there. It'll help add some power to the network. And then each one of these tamers, once all the batteries are good, end up being thermal batteries. For instance, in here we have 62 kilos of steam per tile. Well, if it's sitting 175 degrees, that's a lot of potential energy from 175 degrees all the way down to 125 when the steam turbine would no longer be able to run, of decent wattage. And when it erupts, like it's about to do now, it only gets hotter in here. Yeah, the steam turbine is actively trying to take it out, but once those batteries are good, it's not going to turn on till 225 degrees. And then the steam turbine will be giving us 800 watts. Keep in mind, yes, I could put all these steam turbines into a power room so that way they could receive the NG's tune-up. And I may end up doing that depending on if this is enough power for all 3 or 4 Radbolt generators. But it would also mean I would need to add a second power building and a bunch more walls, and quite frankly, I don't think it would look as nice. All of our batteries are chocked full and this steam turbine has now turned off. So all of that potential energy that we talked about earlier is just sitting here. And remember, these other 3 Tamers don't even have thermal aqua tuners. So yeah, they'll take longer to get warm, but that iron will get it there. As you can see from blue checkers, we're sitting at 135 to 140 degrees. And this steam turbine not turning on. And it looks like the volcanoes are spaced out enough. Starting at magma checkers, its next activity is 4.3 cycles. This iron volcano is 62.1. This one's going to keep going for 82. And then this one's going to keep going for 4. So they're evenly distributed as far as activity periods, which is really going to help with stabilizing the power setup, which was definitely one of my concerns. That's gonna about do it for today, but do not worry, we still have plenty of content coming up in this planetoid. We need to get the radiation setup going. I also need to get rid of some of these ladders. We're gonna power it by the wheeze wards. I have sent over the phosphorite, that way we can get the temporal tear opened. Then we gotta build out a colony here for a couple of dupes, starting with an oxygen machine, but before I can do that, I need access to water. So I think what we're gonna end up doing is having a massive tank over here in the bottom right or bottom left of the colony, and then have an ice melting system that'll keep water flowing into the oxygen machine. Plus, we also have to do a sleetweed farm. Yeah, we have plenty to do. I'm looking forward to hearing what you thought about this episode in the comments below. And until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.